This is Gabriel Gonzalez for Cageside Press here with the finalist of the PFL World Tournament, Logan Storley, taking on Thad Jean on August 1st in Atlantic City. Logan, let's start there with the obvious. You've had big fights, you've fought for the title, you've been in this game a long time. Does a tournament final like this feel any different compared to the big matches you've had before?
No, I think the only difference is how active we've been. As you did the quarters, then you do the semis. Now you have the finals. So the build up is different because you're on site with each other each time, and so you're seeing different guys, and it might be this guy or it might be this guy. But other than that, it's the same. It's the same thing.
I do want to ask about that with the tournament because to me, I think the biggest thing is that this has felt very quick, more or less, for want of a better word, abbreviated almost because the layoffs in between, the matches are scheduled so close together. For yourself competing, did it feel like, hey, this is happening pretty quick, or do you feel like you've had that proper time, fight, camp, rest, go into the next one?
Yeah, the first one, obviously, we all had that big break before April, or yeah, April,
Yeah.
and then I think it was a 10-week break. So you go home and kind of take a week of active recovery and wouldn't spar maybe the next week, and all of a sudden, you start camp and it's like, holy cow, I'm 4, 5 weeks out all of a sudden. And then this last one, it's only been a month since I fought my last fight. So it's kind of crazy, because as fighters, it's you always have that high of your last fight, especially the ones with the wins. Um, and this tournament is just like you're kind of not forgetting about it, but you're moving on because you're right back into camp. Um, and so I've kind of really enjoyed it just because you're staying active. And I think a sport like MMA it's hard to it's just a hard sport to get experience, and kind of get the momentum always rolling because you'll fight, you'll feel great, and all of a sudden you take a 6 month break, or you don't fight for 6 months, and then you'll have two back to back, and then you don't fight for 6 or 8 months, and um, which were MMA is just so different than other sports, compared to like not combat sports, but other sports. It's just MMA. It's you look at other major leagues, they're competing twice a week, once a week for 16 games, 17 games, or like, and the MLB is 162
Oh, yeah.
games. So it's like these young guys are getting in there and getting that so much experience. And so I think when young fighters can stay active, you're you get that momentum rolling and you just get so much better, I feel like.
Absolutely. I feel like, you just see it. Guys are just dialed in. They just seem to maybe catch up in the fight a little bit. They just seem to get to that, that frequency they want a little faster when they've been more of that rhythm. I do want to bring up that point, or I guess adjacent, because I think the biggest thing, Thad is obviously having a good year himself, but you've had so much experience, obviously, under the Bellator spotlight and big stages. I think Thad, even though he's been doing his thing, relatively speaking, I think he's newer to getting a lot of these headlining and big fight opportunities. For yourself, I want to ask, what are those benefits from having big fight experience? Is it just knowing how to manage the media and the emotions of both the athletic side and the promotion side? Is there something to be said for just that comfort level in the cage? What do you think that experience really amounts to in terms of, I guess pros for a fight compared to cons?
Yeah, I think the the pressure, not the pressure, but just like, all right, this is what's on the line. Like, holy cow, there's a lot on the line. It started when me and Gracie were the first non-title, 5 round main event. Me and him were the first one for Bellator when they started doing that. And then I knew that fight was, pretty much title contention. If you won that fight, you're going to fight for a belt. And then you go to London in MVP's backyard. Um, and I was like, okay, this is for, for the interim belt and the Amasa fight and just all these, big fights. I think the biggest thing is every time I step in there, at the end of the day, it's the same thing. It's just competing, right? And that's what it is. I feel like I do a pretty good job with my emotions. Um, and so I think you just get more comfortable. There's gonna be more fans, there's more on the line, more money, a belt, this and that. But at the end of the day, it's just competing, and that's what it is.
And then I think the biggest thing is for this fight, you obviously have so much experience and you were one of the favorites, I believe, going into the tournament. Would this one, after the career you've already had, would it feel sweeter? Obviously, you're winning a tournament, but to be blunt, it feels like that is one of those guys they're getting behind this season. Is it going to be a little sweeter being able to get that W and win it in this way over this particular guy in your division?
Yeah, for sure. And I get it. I get the promotion for PFL. He's a young guy that they want to keep in PFL. Um, so for me, it's like I want to go out there and I guess I always don't talk the most smack, right? I go in there and I do my job and I'm a little more quiet than some other guys. Um, but yeah, I want to go out there and continue to just prove like, hey, I'm the best. I'm the best. I'm the guy. And so for me, that's what it would really gets me excited about this fight.
For the record, I think a lot of people watching I think everyone would like to think they could be a Chael Sonnen or a Conor McGregor on the microphone. I think there are a lot of people who, if they were pro fighters, would probably be a lot like you also, Logan. And that is not a bad thing at all. So I think I
I
always
just
like to remind fighters that.
wrestling coming from a wrestling background, you never did that in wrestling, and I get the entertainment, and like, but wrestling is the oldest sport in the world, and everything was about respect, and everything was about you go in there, you compete, and you kind of that's what you do. And so it's hard to break that after all those years of competing at the highest level in wrestling to totally change it. Um, and so obviously it would probably, it helps the checkbook if you could do it and sell more fights. I get that. But I got to be true to who I am, and so that's how I am.
Hey, don't we all? A couple more before I let you go. Breaking it down, what do you think of Thad's game and what he brings to the table skill-wise as an opponent?
I think he's a good counter striker, has good movement, a little unpredictable. Did a great job of continuing to get up. With Jason. Jason would take him down, but he kept building. Um, and he never really was. He looked like he belonged the whole time, right? Obviously, he won the fight, but there was never a point where he was getting outclassed or. And I think he did a great job of performing the whole time, right? So I know it's going to be a tough fight. I know that, and we said that to each other in the cage. Um, but I also know he hasn't been in there with someone that can scramble and wrestle and um, for 25 minutes, and gruel, make it grueling and smother them. And so that's what my plan is to set such a high bar that and make him feel a way that he's never felt before, that kind of exhaustion where you don't you can't stand up at the end of it. And so I know it's going to be a long 25 minutes for me, but it's going to be a longer 25 minutes for him. And that's what I have to do.
I think I already know the answer to this question, but I gotta ask it anyway. With all the changes to the PFL roster, ironically, you are in that position. There's both last year's tournament champion and a Bellator champion potentially following this one. Have you thought any bit at all about potentially like, hey, would if you win this, Shamil or Ramazan at the end of the year potentially for the, just all the marbles kind of belt?
I haven't, because we haven't been told a ton, right? PFL. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think they're doing a really good job. I was happy with the way the tournament was, with 8 guys and single elimination. Guys get to fight on the undercard. So I think they did. I really like how they did everything this year. But we haven't really been told a ton about what this tournament, this champion series looks like, right? What our schedule looks like, all that. So for me, everything's been focused on this tournament. You go and win this tournament, then you can kind of you dictate, your future of what your schedule looks like. And so that for me, that's where I'm at right now is I'm just worried about Thad Gene. I know he's a very tough kid, and I got to go in there and beat him first.
I got you. Well, look, we know it's going to be a good one. I'd like to give you the floor real quick. Anyone you want to shout out, anything like that before we head out?
Yeah, I just like to shout out to my sponsors, Get Biofuel and GPAC, and also the Barbarian Foundation. They're doing a great job. It's about bettering humans mentally, physically, emotionally through mentorship, training, and community. And so you can donate, or you can buy the Barbarian water, or just help spread the word. So you can go to barbarianfoundation.org and check that out.
Well, we're looking forward to this one, Logan. Obviously, it's going to be a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, Logan Storley, Thad Gene, August 1st, Atlantic City on the boardwalk for the PFL World Tournament welterweight final. You guys are not going to want to miss it.